These diary entries are so weird for me to do, to not be in the point of facilitator and presenter and to just be talking about myself. I don't know if, for those that have followed me, I was guided by God not to tell my story, so we can see that the words are still a little challenged today. So let's start with there. I was guided not to tell my story for the last few years personally. I still had identity until my first transcendence journey. I was still between the third dimension and the 12th dimension, which meant I still had a human identity. I still had human traumas, human ego, human, all of those pieces. And it wasn't until I went through my transcendence, which took me 3 attempts. 3 attempts. The first was a 3-week period where I could barely open my eyes and I slept most of the time. And I had a lot of support from a dear brother. And then the other 2 attempts, I fragmented by, so each time I fragmented by the human expectations on me. Wow, it's a lot harder to communicate than I thought. This transcendence journey feels a lot more easier than the one. So on my third, after my 3rd attempt, I attained, and I had 8 months of attainment, and that was beautiful. And I was attained in what you would call God's consciousness. Now, at some point when I am able, I will do a video on the different attainment levels, or a post on what attainment is in each level and what the narratives are that you need to go through. And this is why the DAC process is so powerful, because my last transcendence journey was from the 3rd dimension to the my last transcendence journey was from the 3rd to the 12th. And basically using the DAC process to descend into the depths of the core, I was looking at all of the identity that was created as to why I was separate from God. All of the ways that I was angry at God, all the ways that I was enraged at humanity being thyself, all of the sorrow, all of the feelings of being abandoned by God, all of the feelings of being all of the feelings of where I've betrayed God, all of those different representations. So that reality of God consciousness held a very clear narrative, and I was able to use the framework of the DAC process to find things that no other teacher, no other information could assist me to, especially when the mind started to tether, especially when it got close to the release and the transcendent moment, because the mind was fighting, the body was fighting, everything was fighting until I would breathe and surrender in. But without the framework to focus on what was creating the fight, I couldn't just hand the fight over. My mind was too strong, my ego was too strong, I was too strong in my identity, just like many of us, so strong in our identity that when it comes to those moments, we don't surrender. And so the DAC process helped me to layer right down and to use it every single time, over and over, sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a day before those final moments. Now, this being the landing or the arrival into what is, I'm not attained, so I want to explain that this is not attainment. Attainment is when you're able to be physically in it and hold it, and your body can function from it. And clearly my body's not functioning from this state at this point. I did not sleep last night. I woke up at I went to bed at 8:30, so I slept from 8:30 till 1:30. People might consider that. Never mind, doesn't matter what other people think. From 8:30 to 1:30, and then I came and slept on the couch because the energy around me and moving out of me and became too much to be in the presence of my beloveds. And then I spent 2 hours with my eyes just closed in vastness of space, of nothing, yet there was an activity. Now, this is what you might consider a normality in these moments. Is there can be a stillness, a fatigue, a nothingness, and a hyperactivity or an acceleration of frequency simultaneously. And so I was unable to sleep, but I was also unable to relax for quite a good period until what my body needed to do did what it did. I then managed to fall asleep in that state and dream process what was moving through the physical body. On waking, it's quite marvelous to watch the body actually, and the message I kept receiving from the point in my channel from God while I was going through this was, don't worry about the weight, don't worry about what's there. It will drop dramatically when you get to that point, that birth point. Now that birth point, of course, was the birth of new consciousness, reality for myself. It had nothing else to do with anyone else. And that's where, when we're transcending, we confuse messages. There was many different births for others, many different births for Sister Tara, for the New Earth, but it wasn't. It was birthing me into the world, in which I know with consciousness, yet was still misunderstanding the message because I was still deep in the final depths of the fragmentation that had occurred, that the misconception of truth that wanted to emerge. So the body is, I have a fairly flat stomach for the first time in probably about 8 months. I've either looked about 4 to 5 months pregnant, or I've had a significant amount of swelling still in my abdomen. Now, I can see that it is a little bit reduced in my face and my neck, but mostly in my trunk, in my abdomen, and can feel the fluid retention slowly dissipating. The pain that I've been in as the energy's been held and stored, because the energy, when you're in the final stages of transcendence, the energy in the cells vibrates so fast. It's like vibrating at a point where the cells either create two or the cell dies, right? And you're left with the cells that are there, right? So when you've gone into cell evolution, your cells are vibrating so fast and killing off cells so fast, so that you can shift into that new point. There is a video where an attainment had occurred about an arrival had occurred about 3 months ago, and I shared from that point the bliss, and that was very different to this time. Very different, because, and like the other transcendence experiences I had back in 23 and early 24, each time that I couldn't hold it, the initiation was harder, because it was showing you all of the weaknesses, all the vulnerability points, all of the areas where you are unable to. I was unable to keep it, hold it, maintain it, solidify it. And so each initiation, until it was like, I am devoted to this no matter what, which had its own set of challenges. So the awareness of coming the stage, whether it be weeks or months before the arrival. So the arrival is that you release the last of the story. You release the last of whatever it is to hold the frequency, whether it be Christ consciousness, whether it be divine union, whether it be God consciousness. In this case, it's a 0 point field. So the 0 point field is here. There's nothing. I have no story, no identity, no blueprints, no technologies. I have all of the years that I spent finding, discovering, creating these, all gone, nothing. I have no timelines. I have nothing. There is nothing here. It is empty. It is just the 0 point field where each spark of creation is created in the moment. And that level of attainment is not something that is going to be very relatable for many, and honestly not much that I can cognitively explain at this point because it's so new for me. It will take me time to integrate what is here and how to function from life. But what had to be seen to get to this point was using the DAC framework to deconstruct all of the things that created me as a conscious being, as a consciousness, as a spark, as a spirit, because the 0 point is before creation. The 0 point is there is nothing, and so it was, what is my history? This is beyond deconstructing the identity, because I already didn't have an identity. This is deconstructing the entire pattern of the fabric of creation that I was, from the very point that I became something in this world, in this reality. So going right back to the origin points that would bring me to the deconstruction, or what you would consider reverse engineering, to return to the 0 point of my existence. Now, a big piece of what was holding me from that was that expression of being being a part of the creation of the world, and also seeing the expression of being here for the what we might call the end of the world. Two different polarities, the same thing, different lenses. Very much without witnessing yourself and your stories and your expressions and your reasonings and your memories in both paradigms, you can't deconstruct it. So that deconstruction then brought me back to the 0 point, because that's all that was left in this being. That was all that was left in this consciousness. But if I compare myself to the time when I did this to arrive in God's consciousness, I spent my final 3 releases were very specific processes. When I sat there and I chanted, I am God, God is me, I am God, God is me, for hours, and then I am one with God, I am one with God, I am one with God, I am God, I am God. And when I moved through that and I got to the final statement of hours of chanting, I coughed up a not God entity from my body that didn't even know existed and no one could ever see, because they had not got to that level of bandwidth to witness me in that, to witness what it was that was within me, keeping me separate from God. That was the not God consciousness. Now, without the DAC process, I wouldn't have known how to find these things within myself in these moments, because in those final moments, you go through a lot of hallucination, you could say, from the separate mind, or from the false narrative that is deconstructing and learning itself. And that will tell you one side. It will always tell you one side. It won't tell you the truth. It will tell you one side. In your initiations, when you're coming from that, how do you know? Well, when there's unease in the body, when your mind's erratic, then there's paranoia, there's projection, whatever it is, in the form of your mind, your previous reality fighting for survival. And the ability that I've had this time around was that the body for me was still holding the origin points of the creation of the earth and the end of the world concepts through the divine plan programming, through the different timelines that were still instated. And so what I needed to do for me to get here was to use the DAC process to deconstruct consciousness that was still locked into the somatics. This is why I had such a physical experience. This is why you'll witness me go from God knows what kilos I am. I wouldn't want to step on a scale. Never been this in my life, right? Never. Always been fairly lean, fairly thin. Had to been able to eat whenever I want, be able to run and move and exercise and all of those things, or not, and it didn't change my weight. I would sit consistently. So this physical representation of illness, this imbalance in the physical body, that is showing the initiation. And the initiation was in the body to go, these are not lining up with your spirit, with your consciousness, with all that you know. And so there was very little trigger because the other quadrants were clear. I'd cleared the consciousness, I'd cleared the majority of the spirit, I'd cleared the emotions. It was all physically in the genetics, in the cellular structures, in the molecule. And so using the DAC process to look at disease specifically and to go through each and every disease that I could find based on the consciousnesses that were presenting to me. If we understand that every single mirror, everyone in our life is a mirror to what it is that is traversing through us. I was able to see different physical representations in disease through words or through what was coming up, whether it be panic, whether it was hallucinations, whether it was mania, whether it was some form of abandonment or loneliness. All of those consciousnesses I've spent the last 3.5 to 4 months breaking down each and every one with the DAC process and finding out how do they represent in the mental, how do they represent in the spiritual, what soul fragment occurs, how do they represent in the physical and the emotional, including the core wound and the state that's created. For example, oh look, I do have one here. For example, the final quadrant I did was hallucination. It wasn't my hallucination, it was a beloved sister that was there mirroring. But what was the physical manifestation? It was hypothyroidism, which had come up for the last week and a half before, but because there were so many things moving, it got maneuvered out. It was not time. It was not a readiness. It needed to show up at a specific time to deconstruct it. And so these beautiful, powerful quadrants of this method of deconstructing illness, fragmentation, is quick, it's simple, it's fast, it takes mind-heart coherence. This process of the DAC process will transform humanity. So let's do one here. Heartache was one of the ones that I went through. When you clear heartache, you then also release the state of rejection. You release the state of feeling rejected by life, by God, by experience. The thought that runs in the mental quadrant, the consciousness that creates all of the stories, all of the justifications, all of the things, the looping, is nobody wants me. The emotion is feeling forgotten. The soul fragmentation is a fractured heart chakra. The physical is toxic shock syndrome. That's the physical manifestation, is toxic shock syndrome. Now they talk about that only coming up when you use tampons, but that is a cellular energy that can only happen when someone uses tampons if they've already got this physical element in their body. Just like if we look at vaccinations, anything like that, nothing can happen to a being unless they already have the physical fracture, the physical manifestation from one of these consciousnesses that creates that experience, which means we can instantly heal. This means that we can instantly transform, and we can shift our genetics. And I know a big part of this is me showing you and proving to humanity, to all beings, the possibility that you can change your genetic footprint. Because I have had, past tense, genetic chromosomal disorders, or what you might call a microduplication. I have had a conditions that are untreatable, that are disappearing as I land, as I hold. And that will be what will be shown, is the condition called hemihydropathy, which I will share photos and videos when I'm guided to. Half of my body is significantly larger than the other half, and that is based on many very interesting things. But those cells can now reset to the 0 point consciousness. I don't need to hold that story anymore. I don't need to hold that story anymore. This is where the entire reality shifts. So the core wound of heartache is love's dangerous. Now, this awareness of these quadrants was that they were providing me, because I was so clear in so many areas except for my physical. I needed everyone around me in the allness that I'd come to, in that God consciousness. I was one with everyone, to be my mirror. I needed everyone's wounds, everyone's painful expressions, because I couldn't have seen it without them. Not at that level, not at that point of information, because when you look inside, there's nothing. When you look inside, you can't find. It's clear, it's spacious. When you become one with all, you see that you are every other being, and you can navigate. And so this DAC process helped me to navigate. It helped me to go, well, I actually don't hold these core wounds or these emotions or these stories anymore, because my mind is clear. That happened when I transcended into God's consciousness. When I last arrived, my mind is clear, my spirit is clear. My emotions, I no longer am emotionally reactive. I'm peaceful, I'm calm, I'm neutral. I have expression, but I am not from the emotional expression of the psyche. And so that is how it's assisted me. It's assisted me to see what I could not have seen without the mirrors of my life, and using this process to deconstruct the human psyche step by step, layer by layer, very intentionally. And so for others, if healing something so much so that a doctor has said you can't do it, if healing a specific childhood trauma or wound is something that continues to plague you, you don't have any tools, you don't have the ability to support yourself, your nervous system, if moving beyond the limitations of your mind, whatever level, no one has to get to this point. No one has to come to the point that they are in a point of arrival or transcendence twice, or to push as far as what I have. But you can use it for the simple things and make your life so much different. You can transcend things like the need for alcohol. You can transcend the things like the need to emotionally eat. You can transcend the feeling of body shaming. You can transcend your eating disorder. You can transcend the narcissistic empath relationship, whatever focus it is. This process will show you a direct framework of how to get to the core pain points, dissolve them, dissipate them forever, so that you can live beyond that suffering, beyond that hurt, to be in the peace, the transcendentness of whatever it is that you want to live beyond. I wanted complete sovereignty. I wanted complete sovereignty. I wanted nothing and no one to ever be able to control my being, my experience. I wanted to give it all up. I wanted the blank slate. No attachments, no stories, no future, no plans, no nothing. Space. That's it. Because I've experienced many other things, many lifetimes, many versions. I just didn't want any of it anymore. I didn't want any of it anymore. I just wanted to start again, to return from before. And so for me, I have already completed what is true for me. And I get to live from that now. Because I know that this is the time of attainment for me. It won't take me 3 attempts this time. Because I know the path, I know. And that's what I'm here to share through these diary entries, is awareness. So the focus for me today is to manage my course facilitations from this point, to create everything from this expression, so that there is an ease and let it unfold however it will be, knowing that it's perfect. I don't need to do anything. I just need to listen to the energy through me, same as this. I didn't know what I was coming on to share other than that my body's changing, less swelling, the sleeping, a lot of tension in my head that's moving out. Very minimal ringing in the ears, and an adjustment, a very quick adjustment in comparison to what it has been in the past. Yet, what I do know about transcendence is every time that you think that you're alright, every time you think that you've got it, and you speed up and you stop focusing, something happens and often can fragment you, and you have to find that connection point. Once you're out of it, it's very hard to find it again. Very